Welcome back to my channel. In today's video, we're going to talk about choosing the correct option strike when options trading. I see a lot of traders that are buying cheap options because they could afford it. Then realistically, those options will never go into money to the point where you're theoretically gambling. Options are meant to go to zero, but you can profit if you know how to pick the correct option strike. Now let's dive in. First, you will need to have a good understanding on draw on liquidity. I will put that video in the description below. Please watch that video, then come back. Now, if you have a great understanding of draw on liquidity, next, you want to be realistic with your options chains. A lot of times traders are picking options chains that are maybe 10 bucks when realistically they should be buying options chains that are maybe worth 60 bucks. Yes, I understand you're trying to save money, but in reality, you're just going to lose money. How to fix that is by picking better option strikes. Now let's dive into a live example here. So for this example, what can we see? Notice how we are currently coming from an uptrend. We currently got a pullback and now we have a market structure shift. We pulled back into the gap fill, buyers are currently stepping in. Now at this point, we are looking to go long. Now we need to identify what is our price targets. What's our drawn liquidity? So we have buy side liquidity up here, buy side liquidity up here, and buy side liquidity up here. Now, when picking the correct option strike, I like to pick PT1. So for this example, I'm going to pick 47.65 calls. The reason behind that is because once these go into money at our first price target, our intrinsic value now increases. Our delta to theta ratio now increases as well, to where we don't have to worry about pullbacks. So the traders that decided to pick maybe 4,800 calls for this same exact trade setup, once they deal with retracement, they're probably thinking, oh my goodness, I'm down 20%, let me cut the trade. But because we got 47.65 calls, we have nothing to worry about. So let's play this out a bit. So now at this given point in time, we are looking to go long. We have our change in state and delivery from bearish to bullish now. Ideally, our stop loss is going to be below this low. So let's play this out. So now notice how we hit our first price target. At this given point in time, we are now in the money. And following through, all of this extra move is now increased profits. We have nothing to worry about. For an example, if you picked 4,800 calls because they were cheaper, these red candles, you're probably going down back to break even, back green, this red candle probably back to break even again. But because you ended up picking 47.65 calls instead, now you're able to capitalize on this move. You have nothing to worry about. You just trade the charts. Let's dive into a live example that we took earlier this week. As you can see, SPX is currently in a uptrend. And what do I mean in an uptrend? Notice how buyers are currently here based on a daily time frame. We are currently consolidating in this range, but the overall trend is up. So therefore, we want to be with the trend. So all of this chops to the downside, we don't really care for it. The reason why is because we want to trade with the trend. Now, the reason why I chose 48.60 calls is because of our PT. The same thing we talked about earlier. Notice how our first price target was 48.59, basically 48.60. Now, once we break past our first price target and head towards our second price target, where we are looking to take a larger trim, all of this intrinsic value from this move from here to here, we are able to capitalize on that. The reason behind that is because we are now in the money. We have nothing to worry about. All of the retracements, we don't have to worry about. Now, if you took 48.65 calls, you probably ended up not making much profits if you were greedy. The reason behind it is because there was a pullback towards the end of the day that ultimately made those contracts worthless. Now let's dive into the trade, and then we're going to take a look at the options chain. Let's play this out a bit. Notice here we got our market structure shift. That was our first signal for us to go long. After we got our market structure shift, I wait for a slight pullback to start building my position into 48.60 calls. So I actually take my first entry on this following candle here. I take my first entry right here. I enter 48.60 calls with the average fill around 2.2. This is just a starter position. I wait for price to pull back a bit more to give us a better entry. The reason behind that is because we are trading options. When we are trading options, it does rely on having great entries. If you do not have a great entry, you're going to have to deal with a lot of chop and pretty much an emotional roller coaster, especially if you're trading your P&L, not the charts. Now, when you have great entries, you don't have much emotions to worry about. The reason behind that is because the trade never goes against you. Let's play this out a bit more. We actually add to our position and take an average down at 238. So if we were to go down to the lower time frame here at 238, I average down on those contracts, and that brings my average down to 1.3. Notice how we entered here at 2.2 for those contracts, and we get an average at 1.2 from the entry based off of this entry right here. Now the reason behind that is because of theta. That's why it's so important to be patient as an options trader. You have to take the A+ setups and you are chasing. Chances are, if you bought calls up here, chances are you probably got filled at maybe 3.5, maybe even 4. But in reality, you would have been sitting through chop the whole entire time and potentially dealing with a drawdown of maybe even 50-60% before the trade actually went your way. You're going to see what I'm talking about once we look at the option contracts. Now let's play this out some more. So at this given point in time, we are able to capitalize on this move for the end of the day. That's why I picked 48.60 calls, because once 3 o'clock hits, these contracts become very, very volatile. So in order to minimize the emotions that volatility can create, we ended up taking a closer to in the money strike. Therefore, once we got this pullback here towards the end of the day, we didn't really feel any emotions whatsoever. The reason behind it is because the entire time we stayed up. So once we got that move back up, we were able to close these out, or the market ended up closing these out for over 4.5 per contract, even though we got an entry at 1.3, or an average entry at 1.3. Now, let's say you were to buy 48.65 calls. Notice how 48.65 calls only wicks up there for a split second. You never actually get the chance to go into money and capitalize on the intrinsic value. That's why it's so important to pick the correct option strike that lines up with your PT1. From there, if you get continuation after PT1 is hit, now you get to capitalize on the real move. This second wave is pretty much what's going to actually pay you. The first wave kind of gives you confirmation that, hey, the trade could work out. But once we break past PT1 as we do here and get continuation up, that's what gives us confirmation that the trade's going to work out. And we no longer have to deal with the emotions because, hey, we're sitting in the money the whole time. Now, looking at the options chain, notice how when we took our average down here at 238, notice how we got our average fill around 1.2, which brought our average down to 1.3 total. Now, at this given point in time, do you see how the options change is moving? Notice how it's moving very healthy, how we could sit through these retracements, and hey, we're not really negative whatsoever. The reason why is because our average is at 1.3, which is down here, and all of these retracements, they don't really hurt us, they don't really hinder us whatsoever. Then we get our push up ultimately to our PT, and then we get our PT tested again at the end of the day. Now, let's go take a look at 48.65 calls, which was one strike out the money. Notice what happens here. Now, let's say you were to buy 48.65 calls. Now, if we were to follow or simulate the same exact trade that we took with the 48.60 calls, you'll see, notice how if we were to average down here at 238, which we did on the 48.60 calls, these calls were about 42 cents. Now you do get almost an 800% return on investment Yes, but you are not able to sit through the move and potentially see if the market wants to give more. While we were able to sit through the retracement the entire time during power hour, you could not sit through the retracements on the 4865 calls. The reason behind it is because the delta to theta ratio is now negative. It is no longer in a positive ratio. Therefore, these contracts are very likely to expire worthless. That's why it's so important to pick the correct option strike. Hopefully this video helped. Like, comment what you guys would like to learn next, and I'll see you guys in my next video.